welcome to In Focus. I'm John Lieberman, joined by a very special guest, Martin Barkman, the Senior Vice President and Global Head of Solution Management for the Digital Supply Chain here at SAP. Martin, it's good to see you.
John, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's just jump in. If you do a Google search right now for COVID-19, right near the top of that, the stories start about supply chain, uncertain supply, demand volatility, constrained capacity. What are you seeing on the front lines of this supply chain issue right now?
There's no doubt right now, supply chains are more important than they've ever been. I mean, look, as people, we need supply chains to help us continue to live and function. And in the midst of this crisis, companies are realizing that supply chains have to now be more resilient than ever before. We are living through the era where our supply chains are going to be tested.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I would venture to say that there was a huge percentage of people in the world who prior to this probably never used the term supply chain. They just kind of assume that things are going to get to their grocery store shelves or medical supplies are going to get to the hospitals. So let me ask you this. What are you seeing in terms of how companies are kind of leading the way here?
Yeah. So first of all, I think it's important for everyone to know what a supply chain really is. Mm-hmm. And it starts with getting material, typically from the ground, and creating something out of it. And of course, that happens in multiple stages. You might rely on suppliers, so you got to procure components. You have to design the products into the right structure. You have to manufacture it. That might require multiple stages. And then ultimately it has to be distributed to the point of the retail customer and even to the point of consumption for the individual consumer. So there is behind every product that we consume as individuals, a supply chain or many supply chains. And these supply chains were already undergoing changes, becoming more networked, becoming more customer-centric, lots of investments in automation. And the companies that already were down a path of making those investments are now actually in a better position to showcase the resilience of their supply chain. Let me give you an example. We've got several consumer product companies that are using SAP software already, and they are able to better match demand and supply and do that exercise instead of weekly on a daily level, on an hourly level, using these digital platforms that they've invested in. And we think that's cool, not just because those companies are more successful, but we as consumers actually now have access to those products more reliably and more frequently.
Yeah, and so you mentioned a little bit about what SAP is doing. Let me ask you about the integrated business planning. Talk a little bit about that. What is it and what's it doing at this point?
So imagine if you're sitting and you have a supply chain operation, you have to decide, what's my demand now look like? And of course, you could have historically applied lots of statistics, but right now, demand is radically changing. Some products are spiking. Home computing equipment, for example, is in high demand. Even things like bread machines are actually seeing a spike in demand. But at the same time, there are products that are important but that are seeing less demand. And of course, this picture is changing over time, and it's radically different in different parts of the country. So then you have to decide, whatever product you make, what's my capacity? Has that changed? And where should I make the product? And when I make it, in what quantity? What mix of products, right? Do I make the large bottle sizes or the small bottle sizes?
Let me ask you this last question, Martin. We know kind of through the mass media what's on the minds of consumers when it comes to supply chain, toilet paper on the shelves and, syringes for tests, or not syringes, but swabs for COVID tests. But what keeps you up at night as an expert? It's very rare that you see an interview with a supply chain expert in the media, and we know why that is. But what is concerning to you, and what also gives you the most reason for optimism here?
So I as a manufacturing guy, it should come to no surprise that my biggest concern is safety. It's safety of people as they now return into their work environments, whether it's in offices where they're managing supply chains or actual production or distribution locations. And, you know, by and large, most companies focus on safety in a very, very structured way, right? If there's a safety hazard, it gets identified, discussed, flagged, and hopefully mitigated and remediated. What we now face is a whole new set of safety hazards, which is employee to employee infection risk. And I just would like, what I worry about is the safety of the people behind it. I do believe we need to take a hard look at that. It's something that often doesn't get discussed, but it does keep me up at night. And I'm very confident in the entrepreneurial nature and the adaptability of those folks in supply chain, that there's no doubt that we're going to have stronger supply chains as a result of this. I mean, just back to my safety issue, look, by having better risk methods of managing employee to employee infection risk, maybe the common cases of cold and regular flu will go down as well. And we will be overall much healthier. So I'm actually very positive, but it's going to require some work.
Yeah, sure will. Sure will. Martin Barkman, Senior Vice President, Digital Supply Chain at SAP. Martin, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Stay safe and good to chat with you.
Good to chat with you. Thank you.